So I've been dailying this phone for about 3 weeks now. It's really good, but it's also really exciting because there are 3 things in this phone that are going to be trends in smartphones for all of 2025. So even if this phone isn't for you, there's gonna be a lot more phones like it that are really good, which is sick. So those 3 things are the incredible battery, the chip, and the record-breaking display. So let's just get right into this battery. It's an easy place to start. This is the OnePlus 13, and it has a 6,000 milliamp hour battery. This perfectly reasonably sized, kind of slim phone without being super thick has a battery literally double the capacity of the Galaxy S8. It's kind of nuts, actually. So if you've been keeping track of phone battery sizes for the past few years, you might be wondering, what is happening? Like, how is this jump all of a sudden happening with a bunch of phones? Like the Galaxy S24 Ultra from last year, this, full-size mega flagship has an enormous 5,000 milliamp hour battery, but yet suddenly there's a bunch of new phones in the past few weeks that are not thicker, that have a 5,500, 6,000, even 7,000 milliamp hour battery. Like, what is happening? And the answer is silicon carbon. These new batteries, without getting too technical, they are still lithium-ion batteries, but with a new silicon carbon anode, or a mixture of silicon and graphite. But the results have really spoken for themselves. They've been bangers. More energy density, obviously, but also enabling faster charging and a greater range of operating temperatures. So pretty much great all the way around. It's also pretty new, so this is a bit of expensive technology, so it's going to be in flagships mostly to start. But this is the first part of a wave of new phones shipping with them. This will be great for small phones having better batteries. This will be great for folding phones like we've seen already with the Honor Magic V2, which is impossibly thin but has 5,000 milliamp hours of capacity. And that is absolutely how we got this OnePlus 13 being thinner and lighter than the OnePlus 12, yet having a 10% larger battery. It was honestly hard to find a day to challenge it and try to drain the whole thing. The truth is, even with my high brightness use, plenty of multitasking, this is a 2-day phone at 120 hertz, and I turned it up to high resolution. I had days of like hours of GPS navigation, high brightness, a whole bunch of stuff happening, Bluetooth streaming, a whole ton, and I'd end the day with 6 hours of screen on time, and I'd still have 35% battery left. So I basically can't kill it in a day. It's sick. But when it finally does get low, it has 80 watt fast charging, so it can go from 0 to 100 in 36 minutes, and it supports 50 watt wireless charging with the right charging pad. This is the best that smartphone batteries have been since the beginning of the modern smartphone. I promise, this is a great battery, and there's gonna be a lot more like it. That's the exciting part. Hell yes. So that's number 1, the battery. Number 2 is this new chip inside as well. This is the Snapdragon 8 Elite chip in this phone. And, this new chip comes out every year from Qualcomm, and a bunch of US flagships use it. And typically we see, 5% improvements here, 10% improvements there if we're lucky. And that's respectable. But this year, the improvement over last year's best has been way bigger. It has a 31% higher CPU clock speed. It scored 36% higher on the Antutu benchmark, 44% higher on the single-core Geekbench. It jumps up 14% on 3D Mark. Like, this thing is putting up Wilt Chamberlain numbers. I'm loving it. Now, if you're just opening up Instagram or flipping through emails, it kind of sounds like none of this is going to matter, and you'd mostly be right, but I love to see this type of jump on both power and efficiency, because it means if you're pushing the chip, it's been shown to hold high frame rates and high power outputs for longer without throttling. But if you aren't gaming and you are just bouncing around casual apps or scrolling Blue Sky or emailing or whatever, it turns out your battery efficiency gets much better too. So this chip has been great in a couple of phones that it started to show up with late last year. ROG Phone 9 Pro, Red Magic 10 Pro, great performers, great gaming phones, but now it's gonna also start to show up in regular flagships. I'm pretty sure Galaxy S25 lineup's gonna have this chip, and it's gonna be great too. So lots more phones to also have that this year. So number 1 is the battery, it's great. Number 2 is the chip, it's great. Number 3, last but not least, is around the front, and it's this display. Holy nits. So I called this a record-breaking display earlier, which might not mean much because every year there's been a new record-breaking phone with the highest max nits. This is another one on that streak. 1,600 nits in high brightness mode, 4,500 nits peak brightness. And apparently this is the world's first display that's gotten an A++ from DisplayMate, whatever that means. I feel like I'm getting DxOMark flashbacks here. What you really need to know is this is a big display that looks really good all of the time. And it achieves that because on paper, it absolutely does not miss. It's 6.82 inches corner to corner, Quad HD plus resolution, so it's nice and sharp, 120 hertz LTPO. It's mostly flat with like just the very edges curving over just slightly, so I can forgive that. It has great viewing angles, and it just gets insanely bright from corner to corner, and it can get super dim as well. Plus, it has 2160 hertz high frequency PWM dimming for those with sensitive eyes, and there's an ultrasonic fingerprint reader underneath that's crazy fast. And it also has a new glove mode for increased sensitivity while wearing thin gloves, and AquaTouch 2.0, which does a great job at keeping the screen responsive when there's water on it, which a lot of older phones struggle with. The peak brightness number, the 4,500 nits, is, it's an impressive, very big number, but it doesn't really mean that much. It can't do that on all of the pixels at once. And also the OnePlus 12 had the same number, but it's more just about the crazy full screen brightness. If you're out in the sun taking pictures, or if it's up in your dash, like this screen gets insanely bright. And it's surrounded by basically no bezels. They're even all the way around. What more could you ask for from a screen? So look, I'm excited for a bunch of other phones to also be coming out this year with the same impressive big three that this phone has. They can have this awesome battery, this great chip, and an incredible display. But what you may have also noticed is that is 3 of my 5 pillars of a great smartphone. The other 2 being build quality and cameras. And this phone does pretty good with those also. So I think the design and build is pretty nice. This is good hardware. There's 3 colors to pick from, and they do this thing where the base version, which is $900, is only available in the black. But then the upgraded one for $1,000, you can get in any color, including this nice blue vegan microfiber leather. It's kind of soft to the touch, and I like it. But there's also still an alert slider on the flatter sides, which is a crowd favorite. I personally use it every day. The vibration motor inside is super good. It's really precise. And OnePlus has also hilariously leveled up their IP rating, their certification for water and dust resistance. It's not IP68, it's IP69. It's nice. Which means it can be not just submerged, but also can sustain high pressure water jets at extreme temperatures, which is crazy. And it's also funny because I remember a few years ago, OnePlus not wanting to pay for IP certification at all. So now they're on the total opposite end. This phone can survive the laundry or being in the dishwasher, if that happens to you. Now, there's no Qi 2 magnets built into this phone, but I really like what they've done with their cases. So they've got these official cases that have magnet rings in them, and they are basically the exact same diameter as MagSafe. So now this phone with this case on it works with all of my MagSafe accessories. And I know that might not seem like a big deal since most people buying this phone, don't already have an iPhone and a bunch of iPhone accessories lying around. But what it does do is basically unlock a whole world of accessories for this phone. So with this case on, I've been using all my MagSafe phone mounts in the car or any MagSafe charger or dock. They all work and just lock right in firmly with the magnet. It's great. Maybe the only design downside that I don't like is the camera bump is kind of awkwardly slightly to one side, but that's not a huge deal. Speaking of cameras though, that's the other pillar. And this phone has a solid set of cameras. It's definitely not its strength. And this is kind of, you've seen this before. This is the OnePlus story where they have fast phones, super smooth, great charging and all that. It's just the cameras are a notch below other flagships. It's not a bad camera. It's just, if you're gonna have an awesome spec'd out flagship, but also undercut the other flagships, then you gotta save a little money somewhere. So the OnePlus 13's primary camera is the 50 megapixel Sony LYT 808 sensor with an f1.6 aperture, essentially the same as the OnePlus 12. It is clearly, look, it's gathering a lot of light, and the pictures during daytime and in nice conditions are really nice. It's even good for a little soft depth of field with close-up subjects, and it does a good job of freezing moving action and has good autofocus. It's just that performance drops extra hard when the light goes away, which feels like an obvious statement. It's like saying a tire loses traction when the ground is wet, but it's just a little worse than other competing flagships here. So it gets a little softer, gets a little HDR-y more often with lights, and is definitely a victim of the make every dark photo look bright syndrome that we've observed in a lot of phones in the past. Rarely is anything actually in a deep shadow with this type of processing. And then there's also a 50 megapixel ultra wide and a 50 megapixel 3x tri-prism telephoto camera, which offers some space savings over a periscope zoom, but that's about it. And their performance in the dark is worse than the main camera. Video quality is definitely passable though. I like that basically every new flagship phone now can shoot 4K 60 from all three lenses, and this one can also shoot 8K 30 from the main camera. This is the 5th generation of this OnePlus Hasselblad partnership. And I remember when it first got announced back in the day, and people were wondering if this is gonna be anything special or if it was more along the same lines of what we've seen from like Sony and Zeiss or Xiaomi and Leica. And to be honest, apart from, some portrait mode stuff and the orange shutter button and a few tweaks to their pro mode, honestly, it's turned out to be right in line with those. There wasn't some dramatic reinventing of color science or suddenly a huge revolutionary new sensor, but it's just a little bit better than before. It's fine. It's not, people, again, you're not buying this phone just for this camera, but it's not a disaster. It'll hold up and it'll be fine. Now, some of you might have noticed, AI is not yet one of my pillars of a great smartphone. It's not really close to the list yet, but it is in some of this OS. There are some features with AI built in the camera and some operating system stuff. But honestly, the OS is more important. You could argue that could be a pillar. And I think some people will buy this phone just for the OS. And I think they'd be right. Oxygen OS 15 is still so fast and smooth and brings Android 15 features and a tiny bit of a coat of fresh paint over a lot of things, along with some, shall we say, familiar elements. Like they added this little dynamic island copycat feature. So, hey, if you liked Apple's dynamic island, well, you'll feel right at home with the OnePlus 13. They're actually called live alert capsules, but it also literally shows up in settings if I search island. So I think they know what they're doing. But anytime music is playing or if you have hotspot or a screen recording going on, this little bubble pops up around the selfie camera. And then you can tap it to bring up a card with the controls for that activity. And then you can always long press to jump into the app itself. So look, if you're gonna copy stuff, copy the good stuff, right? Also, I have to at least take a second, and I don't know how to feel about this yet. Maybe I'm curious what your takes are on this, but there's this whole genre of phone testing videos I've seen mostly on Twitter where all they really do is they just open and close apps super, super fast, a bunch of them in a row just to test the animations like this. And a part of me is like, what? That's not how anyone uses their phones. Like, who cares? I wouldn't have known if my phone passed that test or failed, whatever. But also, OnePlus has specifically seen those tests and optimized this phone, changed the animations to do really well on that test now. So here's the Galaxy S24 Ultra doing this and the OnePlus 13. I promise it's not something I would take into consideration when buying a phone, and I don't think I'd even notice it for everyday stuff, but I guess it's impressive that they've done it. They've optimized this animation chain. Thanks. Honestly, though, as a whole, Oxygen OS on this phone is going to be pretty familiar to anyone who's used any previous OnePlus phones or Oppo phones, with a couple AI features sprinkled in now. Like, I still think Circle to Search is awesome. There's also an AI editor in the stock camera app now with things like AI Unblur and Reflection Eraser and Detail Booster, some of which work okay sometimes, but also other times they're still very obviously AI and not that good, and all of which require an internet connection to work. And there's also some writing features that can do things like summarizing or adjusting tone or proofreading text, but it only works in the OnePlus Notes app, which is a fine app, but it would have been nice if it worked in other places too. And it also requires an internet connection. You can still call me a bit of a skeptic on a lot of these AI features actually being useful, but in general, like I said, the software, smooth, super fast, it's really good. And it will be a reason why some people would buy this phone over, say, a Vivo flagship, for example. Well, that and the price. But yeah, OnePlus trying to undercut other flagships by being slightly cheaper than them. We've seen it before. That's their formula and they're sticking to it. But I'm excited about the fact that everyone else can also stick to their formula this year, and it still means we're going to get much better batteries, chips, and displays across the board. So I think we're winning here. Sick. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one. Peace.